Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Donna Just Being Real. My channel is all about dating, love, relationships, house relationship, and advice channel. All right, we're gonna get back into it. Now we're gonna get into day 2 of this trial. So we're just gonna go through little clips I'm watching with you. So we're just gonna skim through a little bit of day 2. We're not gonna watch the whole thing because it was. We're gonna get back into it. Uh-oh. So sorry, now. It's a little bit long. It's like 7 hours. So we're just gonna go through the clips and see who the different people that's on the stand. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get it. And the speed is going to be on 1.30. If it's too fast for you, slow it down. Too slow for you, speed up, whatever you like to do. If it's comfortable. Let's get it.
Like a broken record to always remind you the beginning and the end of court session. Make sure you don't get exposed to any extrajudicial information about the case. Don't talk to anyone, including your fellow jurors, about the case. Don't do any research about the case and avoid all media reports of the case. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday. And Detective Newman, if you could come forward and be resworn for today's court session and take the stand, we'll continue with your direct examination.
Do you swear or affirm that evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
And I forgot to mention, ladies and gentlemen, please hit the like. All right, let's get it.
And you may inquire of Detective Newman.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Just for the record, state your name again, spell it.
Christopher Newman. Last name is Newman.
All right, we wrapped up yesterday with the defendant's interview.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as part of speaking to the defendant, did you learn that he was married at the time of this case?
Yes.
Okay, who was he married to?
Debbie Escalera.
Okay, and as part of your investigation, do you also then interview other people that may know potential suspects or witnesses in the case?
Absolutely.
And as part of your investigation also that involve doing subpoenas or issuing search warrants for phone records?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as part of your investigation, did you obtain, and I know you asked in the interview, you asked the defendant for his phone number. Did you also get the victim's phone number in this case?
Yes.
Okay, and did you also get Deborah Soto-Escalera's phone number?
Yes, we did.
Okay, do you recall what her phone number was?
I believe it's 989.
And for now, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Detective.
You're welcome.
During your interview with my client, he consented to give a sample of his DNA, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
I'm sorry?
I said, yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. And he also consented to a search of his phone, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he also consented to a search of his truck, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you let him leave with the truck
Yes,
after
ma'am.
the search?
Yes, ma'am.
So he took it home.
Yes, ma'am.
And during the course of your investigation, you talked a little bit with the state about that. You learned that Tania was also seeing somebody by the name of Bradley Rodriguez, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you learned that Tania's mother, Tania actually lived with her mother and Bradley Rodriguez, right?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Bradley and Tania lived at Tania's mother's house.
Yes, ma'am. Briefly.
Okay, and that Bradley was kicked out of Tania's mother's house in March of 2018 because Bradley was violent with Tania.
Yes.
And you learned that Bradley was possibly one of the fathers, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You also learned that there was another potential father of the baby by the name of Mark Burke, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you learned through the course of your investigation that Mark Burke actually had a turbulent relationship with Miss Wise, is that correct?
As I recall, yes, ma'am.
And that he had actually abused her and was arrested, correct?
I don't recall if he was arrested for abuse. I can't recall that, ma'am.
Okay, if I showed you your supplemental report, would it refresh your recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No, I'm not objecting at this point. Your coach.
Seems like it's getting a little ugly in the courtroom. She had a few lovers. Defense is bringing everything out. Okay, so I guess one of the guys that was the potential father was living with her. Well, living with her at her mother's home, and I guess he became violent, had to kick out, and there was charges or whatever. All right, let's just hear what's happening now. I'm gonna fast forward through this because I believe they're probably gonna be at the thing for a second. It's gonna be silent.
The reason I would allow this to, it's much like if it's reverse Williams rule. If the roles were reversed, domestic violence, killing, the history between the parties, it becomes admissible. So who wanted to inquire of the detective on this point as far as whether there's a public record as far as that
I
arrest?
just ran Mark Burke with his date of birth for his CCIS, and I don't see any arrest for domestic violence or misdemeanor battery.
Since the jury's out, Detective Newman, what they're trying to figure out is in your report, apparently you had some information about that person being arrested for domestic violence. We were trying to distinguish whether that was based on hearsay that somebody told you, whether there's actually a public record of the arrest that you discovered in your investigation. If you know that off the top of your head, which you probably don't based on what you previously said. That's what they're trying to figure out.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I don't recall that. I remember there was a fraud case from Port St. Lucie that we actually had a report number from. I don't recall any domestic violence getting a report for anything for that. So
See the fraud case. It looks like it was arrest.
So with that, anything else on the proffer? I would sustain the objection because it does look like it's based on hearsay and there's no actual basis for his personal knowledge as far as there being an actual arrest in that regard.
Judge, can I, at the time
Sure.
during our investigation, Mark Burke was under charges, had been arrested for charges with Tania for fraud case.
yes, and I can't recall the case number, but I believe we did get a copy of that. I think it was Port St. Lucie Police that did the case on that.
And they were co-defendants.
I believe they were co-defendants, yes, ma'am.
Did you learn during your investigation that Tania was afraid of Mark Burke because of that case?
There might have been people saying that, but with the amount of contact she was still having with him and meeting up with him when he still had an active warrant, I didn't really take that as she was afraid of him.
No, I don't want you to misinterpret what I was saying. If you wanted to ask him about that situation,
Yes.
I'm not precluding that because
Yes.
that's a separate motive situation. I just didn't want somebody to come in that was hearsay of an arrest that didn't happen through the other domestic violence arrest. So I'm not precluding that.
Yes, sir.
And the state's objection wasn't to that. But just to be sure, I don't know if you heard that, there's, as far as the arrest with regard to the fraud situation, that being separate motive, I'm not precluding that.
Well, and I guess my question about, because I'm looking at the fraud case and it says that Mark Burke wasn't even arrested on a warrant in the fraud case until August 27th, 2018. So she's already murdered by the time he's arrested.
But he knew that the arrest warrant was out based on the evidence he was hiding out at Tomlinson's.
Or there's an
house.
inference that he knew of the global situation and it's a possible motive involved.
Well, I mean, there's no evidence of that that's been introduced in this trial so far, but
He's about to introduce it.
Right. All right, so, but the original objection was to the domestic violence arrest, which we've covered. There is no such arrest. So I'll sustain the objection as far as hearsay on that. It appears to be erroneous hearsay information from somebody else. All right, so I think we've at least made some headway clarifying where we are, right?
Yes, sir.
well, and I guess, so when I redirect him, are we permitted then to be like, so is there some domestic violence arrest between Mark Burke that you're aware of between him and the victim? And he's gonna say no. Because now the jury thinks that they got sent out of the room after she
Well,
asked this
that's
question.
up to you. I could instruct them to disregard the question because he didn't answer it in the affirmative. He said, I don't know.
I know.
That's up to
My
you.
concern is that obviously the appearance of objection gets sent out of
It's
the room.
just part of standard
All right.
litigation trial stuff that happens.
We'll address what we're gonna do then. when
Right.
we-
And otherwise, you're left with the argument that there's no evidence of that. That was just a question. The classic voir dire that I've heard 1,000 times where, didn't I prosecute you for, I think this is your own voir dire. Didn't I prosecute you for this the other day? No, you didn't. That's the question versus the answer. All right, let's bring in the jury and we'll continue. And Detective, if you could scoot closer to the microphone as well, jurors may have some difficulty hearing you. Please continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Sir, in the course of your investigation, you learned that Mark Burke had an active arrest warrant at the date of the murder for a fraud case. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that his co-defendant in that case was actually Tania Wise.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that Ms. Wise was afraid of him because of that case. Is that correct?
Well, there had been people that had said that, but she had had numerous contacts with him after he had an active warrant, and she never turned him in and met with him on a regular basis. So I didn't know how afraid of him she was.
Okay. And when was the last time she had seen Mark Burke, to your knowledge?
I believe when I interviewed Mr. Burke, he said it was the week of her disappearance, and she had performed oral sex on him in his car.
Okay. And I think during your
Excuse me. Okay, that was interesting. Resume.
direct with the state that you said Ms. Wise had been talking to a person by the name of Giovanni Alvarado, that you learned that. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And actually she was supposed to, on the night of her murder, meet up with Giovanni Alvarado. Is that correct?
That's what several people were saying, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that during the course of your investigation, you also learned that a gentleman by the name of Jared Christie had dropped her off at her mother's house on the night of her murder. Is that correct?
That would be, I mean, that was Mr. Casino, right?
Correct. He goes by the street name Casino, but his
Yes, ma'am.
legal name is Jared Christie.
Yes, ma'am.
And during the course of your investigation, you got a DNA sample from Bradley Rodriguez Jr. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you got a sample of DNA from Giovanni Alvarado, correct?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
And you got a DNA sample from Mark Burke, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you get a DNA sample from Jared Christie too?
I don't recall.
Okay. You don't remember if you got that one?
That was what, about 4 guys they just mentioned? So this is all at the same time? Oh, Lord have mercy. Resume.
No, ma'am.
I have no further questions for this witness.
No questions. Subject to recall.
Thank you, Detective Newman. You may step down. You're subject to recall by the attorneys. Please make sure they have contact information for you. And the state's next witness or item of evidence.
Yes, sir. The People Center Protocol, excuse me, Agent Kelly, DP Trentonio.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's another issue we need to address out of your presence. Please proceed to the jury room. Don't talk to each other. Make yourself comfortable in there, and we'll be with you as soon as we can.
Okay, I'm going to fast forward this part and get to it next part.
Don't talk about the case.
Business record certification that a subpoena is coming in, signed by a judge. Then there are other items in this folder. So there's something labeled, and I apologize for the record, it's labeled SUB_TIBCO_772607027_55454944. This is information provided to agency sheriff requester Andrew Belanca. And then it goes through subscriber details and it says Bradley Rodriguez. So that's another individual subscriber information, not the information of the alleged victim.
Well, just in brief response, Ms. Bedola testified that Tania Wise was, her phone was paid for by Bradley Rodriguez. That's the testimony that's before the jury right now.
Do you recall that someone testifying to that?
I do recall that, Judge, but again, it has his name on here. And I just need to note for the record that I'm contemporaneously making these legal arguments without benefit of, good reflection or legal research whatsoever, because the first time that I'm hearing about the state wants to introduce these items into evidence was literally 10 minutes ago in a capital murder case.
Actually, that's not true. The state filed a notice of business records, notice to introduce business records on March 1st of 2021. And these records are in State Attorney Media 64, which is found on the 42nd supplement of the state's discovery, which was also filed and provided to the defense on March 1st of 2021. So all of these items in identical copy have been available to them in their possession since March of 2021.
I think, Judge, I think we're up to 90. We just got a supplement yesterday during the trial. I think we're up to properly numbered. There was incorrect numbering. I think we're up to 92 supplements, incorrectly numbered. I think properly numbered, we're up to 95. There are thousands and thousands and thousands, would not be an understatement, of pages of digital discovery in this case. Just because the state files a notice of introduction of business records, I do not know exactly what they are going to introduce. They have not told me they did tell me with the transcript translations, we are going to introduce these two items. Please provide your redactions. which is the standard course of conduct in our circuit, if you would like to introduce a piece of evidence that's not easily, I guess, debatable, like a picture.
Let me just interrupt you. I have an idea that might be productive. First of all, for legal purposes, I'll consider this, no pun intended, a Richardson hearing. Mr. Richardson. I don't find a discovery violation, but I think we have a practical problem here as expressed by Ms. Minton. She didn't see it coming, even though it was disclosed. So maybe what if you proffered the testimony of the witness as far as what the state is intending to do? Because I have a feeling that everything, this document, if it's voluminous, this thumb drive, it probably contains a whole bunch of surplusage that is not relevant to her testimony. It's just putting it in because it's, and then you'll know what it is, and then maybe we can hone in on for everyone's purposes. I'm not sure it really helps the state's cause to throw a thumb drive back there with the Encyclopedia Britannica. If there's something that the state wants to focus on in the records, you could highlight that. And if it goes into the record, just to, because it's what you have, that may solve the problem. I think on both sides, I can understand the defense hesitation, but there's a lot of presumption on my part as far as what the witness is going to testify to. And I can't imagine that that's going to be a shock to the defense as far as the substance of what's in there. So we want to do that. You want to just bring it in and proffer it and see what the item does as far as in the mix?
Yes, sir. But as a basic premise, can we agree that subpoenas, emails back and forth between the law enforcement agency and the provider are not admissible evidence?
What I was going to suggest there is, depending on where the road took us in the proffer, if there's how many entries are you going to highlight with the witness, just approximately?
Yeah, so
because what I was going to say is, if it was a limited amount, could you perhaps cull out, CULL out from those, the items that you're focusing on, maybe print them out and have them, I think that's better for everybody. It avoids the defense problem and it highlights what the state thinks is important as opposed to the Encyclopedia Britannica on a thumb drive.
correct, and that's exactly what the state's going to do. That is the raw data. And the state, and Ms. DP Tranquilio, has provided Exhibit 148, which is a summary of that, which has the particular data in it that she is relying on.
Okay, so then my suggestion would be, what if you just had her refer to the thumb drive? Is that's globally where she gets the summary? You don't put the thumb drive in evidence. You have to worry about the jury looking in the thumb drive, and we're all good to go.
I have no disagreement with that.
Is that a good plan? Okay, if you got a summary and it's an official summary from her, I think that's better for both sides. It avoids the problem.
And I also filed a notice of intent to introduce summary evidence with this specific exhibit on August 15th of 2025. So this is no surprise to me.
Right.
And that's why I thought that's what they were introducing
Understood.
and not the thumb drive.
But I think I cut to the chase practically, logistically for both sides, where we've cleaned it up.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Better for the state, better for the defense.
That works.
All right. So we don't need to proffer Miss D. I wrote it down phonetically here. DP Tranquilio. The funny thing I was discussing with the lawyers for everyone else here is there's a witness that's testified before me all the time. Her name is D. Pantronio. And Mr. Richardson said D. Pantronio. I thought he was mispronouncing it, and a different person walked in. It's a different person. So we have that on top of everything else. All right. Let's. So you're all good with bringing in the jury, and I can't remember where we got. She didn't get up to the part where she was sworn. I think she didn't get past.
Right.
Okay. All right. So she's in the hall. Let's bring in the jury, and you can recall her, and we'll go from there. And you make for the witness.
You have to, just like anything else that you don't know what you're doing, you start with a basic class, very simple. It's about a 2-day class, and we learn about the different providers. When I say providers, I'm talking about AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, US Cellular, and they show us the records that they maintain, why.
I guess she's the one doing forensic with the phones, with the different towers, find out where these crazy people be located. Okay, let's resume.
they maintain them, how they maintain them, what they look like. And then we figure out all of those records, and we figure out a way to actually plot those on a map so you can visually see where these phones possibly were when they were making a phone call or sending a text message or initiating a data session. After the basic class, you're paired up with a mentor and you go back to the field, you work your cases, you practice some of these records on your own. Then you can get invited to the advanced class. And that's just like the basic, but just a little more nuanced. You learn Google, Facebook, Snapchat, car records, very similar to how you can track a phone, you can track a vehicle. So we work with all of those. And then if you do well, again, in advanced, you continue working with that mentor, you go back to the field, you work on those cases and practice working with those records. After that, you can get invited to what's called CIRA. That's the Critical Incident Readiness Assessment, or CIRA. In CIRA, you walk in, it's not an instructor-based class. So you walk in and your teachers will say, okay, today there's a missing 3-year-old in Miami-Dade County. This is the phone number for the child's father. He was last seen with them, find the child. And again, it's a training environment. So you have to ask for the appropriate records in order to find that child and present your findings to your colleagues, to a team that's ready to go out and knock on doors and look for this child. If you do well in that, again, you go back, practice with those records, come back, and you can take the certification course. The certification course is 2 2-week sessions broken up into what we call Cert 1 and Cert 2. In Cert 1, you will actually get a chance to sit down with the providers and meet with the custodians of record and the engineers. The custodians of records are the folks that actually pull the records for you when we give them subpoenas and search warrants and exigent requests. And the engineers are obviously the folks who create, modify, and optimize the network so that we stay customers, because these are billion-dollar industries, right? And they want to keep doing that, keep making money, and keep us as customers. So that's a really great opportunity. The second part of Cert 2, in Cert 1, we also get about a semester's worth of training on radio frequency theory from professors from the Florida Institute of Technology. So it's the same professors that are teaching folks who actually go out and do this for a living, engineers in the field. In Cert 2, we have the opportunity to learn a new software that we use. It's called ESPA. And then we also learn a new piece of equipment. It's called the Gladiator Autonomous Receiver, or a GAR. If you remember those old commercials, I think they were Verizon, where the guy used to walk around and he used to go, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" Basically, what the receiver does is exactly that. We'll drive every single block in a neighborhood, and we'll act as though we're making a phone call, and we'll be a Verizon phone, a T-Mobile phone, a Sprint phone, an AT&T phone, and it'll say, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" And it'll actually figure out what the footprint of that tower is. So if I were to communicate with a tower, or if I was making a call, what tower would I connect to? In order to connect to a tower, one, very important, the phone has to decide which tower I'm going to connect to. And it does that based on what it views as the clearest, strongest signal for itself at that time. After that, if you're anything like me, and you start your day, as soon as you get in your car, you start making calls. I live in Broward County, so I'll start making my call at my house, and then I'll drive down to work, and sometimes I go down to Miami. So the ending...
All overrule objection is a preface to the overall testimony. You can continue. You're driving in the scenario.
Thank you. So I'll start at my house and then I'll continue driving until I get to work. If I'm headed to Miami that day, my ending tower will be in Miami. So both providers, in this case at least, provide both the beginning and ending towers for your records. And then you'll actually take a case in Cert 2 at the end of your training to a moot court. So it looks just like this. We go to a real courtroom and have defense attorneys and prosecutors that come in and help us. We take a case from initiation. We look at the records, we analyze those records, we create a report, we do a drive test to figure out the footprint, or what we call the ground truth of those records. And then we present our findings in a trial situation.
Okay. And how many of these analyses that you previously described have you actually conducted and performed during your career as a special agent for the FBI?
Well, not every case that I do goes to trial. So I'm looking at phone records on a weekly basis. So I've looked at over 100 phone records, well over 100. But trial is not typically that many.
Okay. And how many times have you testified in a court of law regarding these phone analyses that you previously described?
Regarding phone analysis, probably about 11 or 12 times.
Okay. And you're doing these analyses on a weekly basis?
Yes, most of the time. Yes.
Over the course of how many years?
I became certified in 2021, but I started my first basic class. I was a tactical analyst beforehand, but you are not allowed to be certified in that position. But I took that class in 2016, so I've been working with these records since 2016.
Okay. And were you previously provided with phone records with respect to this case, the state of Florida versus Jose Soto-Escalera?
I was, yes.
Okay. And were you specifically provided with Sprint records in which the subscriber was the defendant Jose Soto-Escalera?
Yes, I was.
And were you also provided with T-Mobile records where the subscriber was a fellow by the name of Bradley Rodriguez, who paid for the phone for Tania Wise?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I'm going to show you this particular item of evidence, which is a flash drive. What is on that flash drive?
These are the records that I received from both Sprint and T-Mobile for this case.
Okay. And did you, and when you say records, are these voluminous records?
They are, yes,
Okay. Did you rely on those records to arrive at the conclusions in your case, in this case?
absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Okay. And I am going to show you what has been marked as states 148 for identification purposes. Do you recognize that?
This is the report that I generated for this case.
Okay. And what is the, and you said it's a report. Go ahead and describe for the jury what data you looked at and how you analyze that data.
Sure. So phone carriers maintain a couple different kinds of records. The first is what's called a call detail record. If anybody remembers getting paper statements in the mail, you have a couple different columns. It's obviously one, your phone number, who you called, who called you, the date and time of that call, the duration of that call. It looks very similar to that. The only difference is with the call detail records is we have some tower information. So it'll actually tell us what tower you utilized to make that phone call, receive that phone call, send that text message, or receive that text message. Same with the data session. So we take those records and we marry them up with what's called the tower list. Phone companies are required to keep a tower list. And
You cannot get away with a crime. Are y'all listening to this? They zoom into everything, especially when you have cell phones. When you have a cell phone, they can track everything you do. I mean, like, think about it. When you go to the fast food restaurants, a lot of people have apps, so they can track you. Oh, yeah, she drove through the drive-thru at 3:49 p.m. and got a cheeseburger and french fries. Everything. Oh, he was in Walmart at this time. Everything. You cannot get away with anything. Why do these killers really think that they're going to get away with it? You're not going to. You're going to get caught. This is not the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, when it was like if there was no witnesses, he was done. They didn't have a body, he was done. You couldn't find him. But now you can find these low lives. All right, let's get back to it. This is the lady who's doing the examine the phones, the towers, and all this, and can pinpoint location. So I guess now she's breaking it down. First, she was talking about her credentials, so now she's breaking it down. Let's listen. Resume.
it's basically every tower within their network. But the call detail records, sometimes they'll refer to the towers as tower 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have to go to the call detail, to the tower list, I apologize, and see where tower 1, 2, 3, 4 is actually located. And that will give us the address and the lat long of that tower. So we marry those two together to figure out, again, where these phone calls were taking place.
Okay, and the report in front of you, does that distill your analysis down to paper form? In other words, does it show the geographical area where these two phones were on the night of August 23rd of 2018?
It does, yes.
Okay, and is this a fair and accurate representation of the report?
It is.
And is it true and correct?
It is.
Okay, Your Honor, the state moves into evidence, exhibit number 148.
Any objection to 148?
You need to see it real quick.
They said that this case is going to actually be a few weeks, I read. I'm surprised why it's going to be so long. Maybe they're going to have a lot of witnesses on the stand. Could be the victim's ex boyfriends or something like that be on the stand. Don't know. All right, we're just waiting.
And ladies and gentlemen, I did want to highlight something. If you recall, the beginning of the trial, and several times I've described to you the difference between demonstrative evidence and actual evidence. The significance of that is when something is actual evidence in the case, it will go back with you into the jury room. And when it's demonstrative, it can be used here in court to explain other evidence. So just bear that in mind. There was a reference earlier to a thumb drive, which is just used demonstratively to explain the actual summary that's come into evidence at this time. In case you were wondering about the thumb drive, is not actually in evidence for later purposes. Thank you, and you may proceed.
Thank you. Okay, so why don't you, and we'll go ahead, is this the first page of your summary, is that correct?
It is.
Okay, and let's walk through and just make sure that we're specific here. There are 2 phone numbers, correct?
Correct.
The first is 772-607-0257. Okay, which individual is that phone number associated with?
That's associated with Tania Wise.
Okay, and then the second phone number, 772-200-61. Which individual is that associated with?
Mr. Escalera.
Okay, we can advance this slide too. So, and I think you described a lot of this already, but why don't you go ahead and just put a briefly summarize what we're looking at here.
Sure. So this just says what I did in my involvement in this case. I was given some records. I was given points of interest for this case and times of interest, as well as dates of interest. I mapped the records around those dates, times, and locations of interest using my software, and then I drew my own conclusions from those records.
Okay, and go ahead and advance to slide 3. So what are we looking at here?
This slide just shows examples of cell phone towers. Something I think that is important to note here is just because you see a cell phone tower doesn't necessarily mean that your phone is communicating with that tower if you're close to it. So for example, I have Verizon for my personal phone. So my phone can only see Verizon towers. I may be standing underneath an AT&T tower. My phone doesn't even recognize that tower. So just because you're close to one doesn't necessarily mean that your phone is talking to that tower. And then something else just to note here is that carriers nowadays, depending upon the location, will try to have the cell phone towers blend in. They're not always these ugly structures on the side of the road like maybe we're used to seeing. So I think that cactus on the left-hand side there, I think that is in Arizona. I think Wyoming has one that's kind of built into like a billboard of a bison. So again, just because you see them doesn't necessarily mean your phone's talking to them. And just because you don't see them or potentially don't see them doesn't necessarily mean they're not there.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and advance to the 4th slide. Okay, why don't you just describe for the jury what we're looking at?
Sure. So most towers have 3 sides. Some towers have 6 sides. Some have 1. Those are called omnidirectional towers. But for the purpose of this report, I think most of the towers in this report have 3 sides. When each tower is placed on Earth, it's not always pointed in the same direction. So we call that the azimuth or the orientation. And that's another column that we'll see in those call detail records. The carriers will let us know how the tower is oriented, so we know which direction this signal emanated from the tower to the phone. If you look at the photo all the way to the right, that's how I'll display cell sites that were that the phone interacted with. That shaded area does not show where the phone was located. That simply is just a guide for the direction the signal traveled. So it can or cannot be within that shaded area. And then a good way, I think, to think of my report, this is kind of a weird comparison, I know, but see how those lines are straight and it's very neat and kind of sharp looking. I like to compare that to almost like a cherry pie at Cheesecake Factory. It always comes really neat. The sides are straight. But if you ever cut a cherry pie at home, it's not neat. There's cherries that fall out. And even if you were to smack that cherry pie at home, typically it's still going to be that wedge shape. And you can tell it's a pie, right? But you may have a couple crumbs that are not attached at all at that point. And that's actually a more realistic depiction of what the footprint of a cell tower actually looks like. Radio frequency is not a straight line. It's jagged. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at the report. The report has these sharp lines just to show a direction or again, as a guide. But radio frequency does not travel in a straight line like that.
Okay, and why don't you go ahead? I think this is a good point to go ahead and describe to the jury some of the limitations of your analysis. You mentioned the analogy of a cherry pie kind of point. Why don't you go ahead and describe that?
Sure. So a couple things just to take into consideration. These records are maintained by the cell phone companies. I don't know who's holding the device at the time. If it's a phone call, I don't know what was said on that phone call. If it's a text message, I don't know what was written in that text message. If it's a photo, I don't know what the photo is of. Same thing with the data session. I can't tell that they logged onto Facebook or they sent an email. I can only say that the phone interacted with this tower at this time on this date. So just something to keep in mind throughout the report.
Okay, and if we could advance to slide 5 now. Okay, go ahead.
Time in advance is another record that the telephone companies keep. This is what we consider the golden standard. Time in advance is a record that will it's a signal that's sent from the tower to the device and back to the tower. And based on the amount of time that it takes the signal to go from the tower to the phone and back to the tower, we can figure out with a mathematical equation based on radio frequency and how it travels at the speed of light, how far away that phone may be at the time that it made that phone call or again, sent that text message to her. But however, for time in advance, it's important to note that you don't have to be making a phone call to get a time in advance record. You don't have to be sending a text message and you don't have to be within the footprint of that tower to talk to a tower. Time in advance is completely up to the network and whatever tower wants to take a measurement of itself to the phone and back to itself can do so. So sometimes you'll get time in advance records that are very far away from the phone and the phone is clearly not within the footprint of that tower. That's normal for time in advance. That's not typical for a call detail record.
Okay, and if we could advance to the next slide. Okay, what are we looking at here?
This is the phone number ending in 0257. So T-Mobile, anytime somebody signs up for their services, they keep a subscriber log. This phone is registered to Bradley Rodriguez, but again, used by Tania Wise. And it just says when they started their service, ended their service, and then a couple of other information about the actual device itself.
Okay. And if we could advance to the next slide, please.
This is the same thing, but for Sprint. This is for the number ending in 6163. Subscribe to Mr. Escalera. And again, it just says when he started his relationship with Sprint, and then that the phone was maintained by him as a subscriber, his address, information like that.
Okay, and the next slide.
This is basically the same thing, just how Sprint kind of use it on their screen in their own program. But again, we can see that the phone ending in 6163 is subscribed to Mr. Soto-Escalera here as well.
Okay, is that this name right here? This is Laura?
Yes.
Focus in. Okay, and the next slide, please. Okay, and if it would be easier for you, if you would don't mind stepping down and kind of walking the jury through what we're looking at. So here we are on the next slide. Go ahead and tell the jury what we're looking at.
So all of these green dots are T-Mobile towers. They make up the T-Mobile network. All of the black dots are Sprint towers, and they make up the Sprint network. I was given, as I said earlier, a couple different points of interest for this case. The first being this red flag here. That's the location of where the victim's body was found. The second here is this green flag. That's the victim's residence, or Mrs. Wise's residence. And this yellow flag is Mr. Escalera's residence.
Okay. And go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you.
You can see that the towers are kind of spread out here. This area is not super densely populated. If you were to go to an area like Manhattan or Los Angeles, you would see a lot more towers, a lot closer together, much more packed and condensed. But because this area, you have less people, less devices, less people that need resources from reaching the towers, you have less towers. They're a little more spread out, and especially like in areas like this, I'll point out over here, you don't have a lot of towers. That's just because there's not a lot of people here. It's very rural in this area.
Okay. And the next slide, please.
Okay, so here we have some time in advance records and some call detail records or phone calls that were made. I'll start with this one over here. See how this arc is a little bit darker than this one? That's only because there are actually quite a few time in advance records that are almost pancaked on top of each other here. So the first one we'll look at was on August 23rd, 2018 at 8:06 p.m. And that's this outermost arc here. You can see that there's a little area that's just a little bit lighter, a little further west. That arc was 1.73 miles from the tower. This arc relates to the phone ending in 6163 used by Mr. Escalera. So that's telling us that the phone used again by Mr. Escalera was in an area consistent with the defendant's residence, with his own residence. And then if we look here at 8:07, 8:08, and 8:18 on that same day, August 23rd, Mr. Escalera's phone moves just a touch eastbound. And that's that darker shaded area here. That three different, again, kind of pancaked on top of each other, time advance records. Now, if we continue on at 8:18 p.m., the phone again moved eastward closer towards the victim's residence. And we see that that arc was 0.94 miles away from the tower at that point. If we look here, these are all the phone calls that were made on this day from 8:06 p.m. through 8:18 p.m. on August 23rd. Let's look at the first one here. At 8:06 p.m., we can see that our target phone, the phone ending in 6163 used by Mr. Escalera, called a number ending in 0257. That was actually the phone that belonged to Tania Wise. That call lasted 38 seconds. It was a voice call, and again, it was from Mr. Escalera to Ms. Wise. Now, because we have Mrs. Wise's call detail records, we see that same call, but incoming to her phone right after. So it took about 2 seconds for it to register to get to her phone. And then again, the call lasted 32 seconds on her side, and it was an incoming call from Mr. Escalera's phone. Then Mr. Escalera at 8:07 and 8:08 p.m. calls two people. The first has a phone number ending in 3288, and the second phone number ending in 8475. And then if we continue on again, just like the first two calls we saw that kind of were the same call really, we have that same instance here at 8:18 and 15 seconds. Mrs. Wise's phone calls Mr. Escalera's phone. And then we see the incoming call on Mr. Escalera's phone from Mrs. Wise, again at 8:18. And then we have another instance of that repeated call again at 8:18 and 15 seconds approximately later. Mrs. Wise's phone calls Mr. Escalera's phone, and then we see that incoming call to Mr. Escalera from Mrs. Wise's phone on his record. All of these calls were made from a tower right here, right where those two sectors kind of intersect.
Okay. And the tower, what can you say about the tower, the final tower that's that those calls communicated off of? Is that how close to that is the victim's residence? Close to how close is the tower to the victim's residence? I'm sorry.
So here's our key, but clearly less than a mile, maybe a block or two away from her residence there.
Okay. Okay. And then if we could advance to the next slide, please. So what are we looking at here?
So this is at 8:25 p.m. And then we have a couple different records that are just spread out by a couple different seconds here. So we'll start with the first one at 8:25 and 27 seconds. We have a call, an outgoing call from Mrs. Wise's phone to a number ending in 6163, which we now know is the phone used by Mr. Escalera. And that was done via this sector here pointing eastbound, the green sector. All the green calls, if I didn't mention this earlier, belong to Ms. Wise, and all of the black calls in the black sectors belong to Mr. Escalera. At 8:25 and 28 seconds, we have again that same duplicative call, but on Mr. Escalera's record. So we can see that he received an incoming call from a number ending in 0257, which we know belongs to Ms. Wise, and he used this sector to receive that call. So towers may be in the same spot, and what companies will do sometimes is it costs a lot of money to build these towers. So once a tower is already built or constructed, they'll just put their antennas on top of each other. So sometimes you can see different layers, and sometimes it's different layers of the same network. Sometimes it's different networks or different providers. But it looks like the towers are very close together, if not the same tower. The sectors are just different because remember how I said they orient their towers differently? So his tower, and specifically the sector that he used, is oriented just a little bit further north than Mrs. Wise's was here. Then at 8:25 and 50 seconds, we can see that there was a time in advance record for Mr. Escalera's phone that put him about 0.45 miles from the tower. Within 0.4 miles is Mrs. Wise's residence, which you can see here by that green flag.
Okay, so is it fair to say that Mr. Soto-Escalera's phone is within 0.4 miles away of the victim's residence on August 23rd, 2018 at 8:25 p.m.?
Correct. I would say this is an area that or his phone is utilizing a tower that is consistent with being at or around for residents.
Okay. And if we could advance to the next slide, please. Okay, so what are we looking at here? It looks like we're looking at the time frame between 8:44 p.m. and 10 p.m. on August 23rd of 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead and walk the jury through your analysis, please.
So we have a couple of different things on this slide. I'll start with Mrs. Wise's phone down here to the south of the map. At 8:44 and 8:45, she made 2 calls, and she utilized a sector that was facing southbound, right here, kind of adjacent to the Florida Turnpike. Both of those calls were outgoing to numbers ending in 2218 and 7301. And here, typically on the other side, we saw a duration. Here it says -1. That's just a nuance with T-Mobile records. Sometimes they don't maintain the duration for certain calls. And when there's no duration populated in their call detail records, our software will kind of tell us that by just inputting a -1. So it's not that the call was -1 seconds. Obviously, that's impossible. There was just no duration noted there.
Let me stop you there if you don't mind.
Sure.
Is it accurate to say that at 8:25 p.m. until 8:44 p.m., the phone for Ms. Wise traveled north?
Yes. Yep, because if you remember at 8:25, the phone was further south down here by her residence.
Okay. And the same question for Mr. Soto-Escalera's phone?
Correct. So we don't see him over here, but we do see him even further north. And again, if you remove from the last slide, he was in that same general area of her house, just like Ms. Wise was.
Okay. So go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead and pick up on your analysis.
Sure. I'll switch over to this center call out box right here. We're going to start with this call at 9:51. That was a outgoing call made from Mr. Escalera's phone to a number ending in 7131. And then this actually, if you remember earlier, I think I mentioned that the phone itself decides what tower it views as the best tower to make that call at the initiation of that call. And that's really important because the network takes over at the ending part of that call or anywhere after the initiation. So you can skip 10 towers, you can only have 2 towers in a call, you can have 1 tower. So the phone decides at the beginning of the call what tower is going to connect to, and then the network takes over. So here you see how we have a 38-second call. Here's a 38-second call, and it's just 38 seconds after the first one. This is actually the ending tower for this same call. So that's why we don't have a phone number over here as well. So the call started over here from this tower and ended on this tower. Now, in between those two, we have a timing in advance arc. And cell phone coverage kind of works similar to a sprinkler system in your yard. You want to have a little bit of overlap just so you don't drop calls because, again, these people are in business to make money. If you're dropping calls, you're going to leave and you're going to go to another provider, right? They don't want that. So what they'll do is they'll create a little bit of overlap, but not too much that it overflows your lawn and your lawn is overflowed with water. In the radio frequency world, that creates what's called a lot of noise in the network. And it gets difficult for the phones to hear the towers to hear the phones, and vice versa. Based on how short this call was and where this time in advance point is, you can see that it's almost right in the middle of both of those towers, which tells me, knowing that there's no more towers in between here, that the phone was likely in this area when it made that phone call. After it made that phone call at 9:52, we'll go to this one at 10 p.m. here. Mr. Escalera's phone made a call to a number ending in 8475, south of that initial call from the slide, but again, using a sector that was pointed northbound. And that's this one right here. And we can see that the timing in advance arc for that tower was about 1.3 miles away from the tower.
Okay. And let me ask you this. What is the closest point that the defendant's phone, Jose Soto-Escalera, got within the intersection of Johnston Road and Russo Road, which is on the crime scene?
So this right here, this red flag is, again, the crime scene where the victim's body was found. This to the tower is 4.33 miles. I would say that that is probably less than 2 miles away.
Okay, and does that include the outside of the crime scene as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And if we could go, I believe that's the last slide. If we go to, okay, that is the last slide. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Agent DP Antonio, thank you very much. I have no further questions. Defense counsel may have some for you.
Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Any disputes to release agent at this time? Any objections to releasing?
No objection.
Thank you, Agent DP Trantonio. You are releasing your subpoena. You're free to stay or leave as you wish.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the state's next witness or item of evidence.
Donna Carmichael with the San Luis County Sheriff's Office.
And you may inquire of the witness.
Morning.
Good morning.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Donna Carmichael, Carmichael.
All right, and are you currently employed?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay, you're recently retired?
Yes, sir.
All right, what did you retire from?
I retired from the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. I was the crime scene supervisor there.
All right, if you could tell the jury how long did you work for the San Luis County Sheriff's Office as the crime scene supervisor?
I worked for the Sheriff's Office for 31 years. The first 11 years, I was the evidence custodian. For 12 years, I was a crime scene investigator. In the last 8 years, I was the supervisor of the unit.
All right, if you could tell the jury what was your background and your training and experience that allowed you to be able to do that job and work all the way up to the supervisor for the San Luis County Sheriff's Office?
I have thousands of hours of training through different organizations such as the FBI, the American Institute of Applied Science, West Virginia University, North Carolina Justice Institution, the International Association of Identification, and LEVA, which is Law Enforcement Video Analysis, and other forensic discipline organizations. Through that, the training is through documenting scenes, processing evidence, video analysis, latent print analysis and comparison, homicide scenes, death investigations, shooting investigations, to just name a few of the different types of training that I attended.
All right, and as far as the crime scene supervisor, were you employed in that capacity back in August of 2018?
Yes, sir.
And were two of the other crime scene investigators, Kayla Lim and Janine Hiller, did you supervise them at that time?
Yes, sir.
And did you provide assistance to them in working the homicide case of Tania Wise?
Yes, sir.
What was your involvement in the case as far as the collecting and the documentation of physical evidence?
Well, there was several different days. We worked on this case for multiple days and weeks. At the initial scene, I assisted CSI Hiller with the documentation of measurements, because of course you need two people to hold a tape measure and that. And then when it came time to examine the victim, I assisted with the examination so allowing her to be able to take photographs while I adjusted the victim, moved the victim for her so that she could take photographs.
All right, so now let's go to August 25th, 2018. Did you assist in the collection of evidence from the defendant's truck?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what I'd first like to show you is some photographs that have been marked. And those have been marked as case exhibits 171 through 182. You can just tell me if you recognize these photographs.
Yes, sir.
All right, how is it that you recognize those photographs?
These are the photographs that I took that day
And where did you take those photographs?
at the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office in the criminal investigations parking lot.
And what are the photographs of?
They are photographs of the defendant's truck, a silver Dodge Ram truck.
Those photographs accurately reflect the defendant's vehicle as it was at the San Luis County Sheriff's Office on August 25th of 2018.
Yes, sir.
At this time, the state would move into evidence with marked identification, states 171 through 182. Yeah. just a second.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
Those items will come into evidence at this time without objection. Publish these photographs. All right, so we have State's Exhibit 171 up on the screen. Where is this parking lot located?
It is on the west side of the sheriff's office in the fenced-in area, which is normally employee parking for the detectives.
All right, and then we're looking at, this is a side photograph, passenger side of the defendant's truck.
Yes, sir.
All right, State's Exhibit 172. I think we can see you in the reflection of the tailgate. What are we looking at here?
The rear tailgate area in the back of the pickup truck showing the license plate number.
State's 173.
That is the driver's side of the vehicle.
Okay, why do you take all these different photographs?
We do it to show if there's any damage or any other evidence that might be easily seen with through taking photographs, and to show the condition of the vehicle when we first see it.
174.
That is the front area of the vehicle to show the front quarter panel and driver's area of the vehicle.
175.
And again, the actual front of the vehicle to show what it looks like.
176.
That is the bed of the vehicle,
177.
just a different angle, making sure we can get all of the areas of the bed.
Let's see, 178.
This is the interior section of the driver's side of the vehicle.
179.
This is a close-up so that it captures the center console area and the seat, and to show that the items on the seat.
180.
This is the back driver's side seat showing that area.
181.
A pair of shoes that were on the floor of the vehicle,
And 182.
the bottoms of the shoes.
Now, in addition to photographing the defendant's vehicle on that day, did you and Ms. Lim also do swabs of the vehicle?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and did you work on the driver's side of the vehicle while Ms. Lim worked on the passenger side?
Yes, sir.
At this time, I'd like to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibits 152, 153, 154, and 160.
Okay.
Do you recognize these items?
Yes, sir.
All right, then as far as 152, 153, and 154, what are these?
There's DNA swabbings that I did of the interior of the truck.
Okay, and if you could describe for the jury just briefly, how do you do that?
What we do is we take sterile swabs that are packed. Two swabs come in a package together. They're sterile, and we open that package. We have small vials of sterile water that we will moisten one of the swabs with the sterile water and leave the other swab dry. We keep the two swabs together when we're swabbing an area so that they're together. Then we will rotate the swabs while we are swabbing the area, and then put the swabs back in the sterile package, and then they go into an evidence envelope.
All right, as far as State's Exhibits 152, 153, 154, those swabs that were taken from the vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And then State's Exhibit 160, how do you recognize that exhibit?
It has my handwriting and information on the package.
And what is that exhibit?
It's hairs that was found on the right shoe.
The shoes from the pictures?
Yes, sir.
This time the state would move in evidence with marker identification 152, 153, 154, and 160.
No objection.
Those items will come into evidence without objection. So as far as that day with that truck, is that the extent of your involvement with that vehicle?
Yes, sir.
So in addition to taking those swabs, did you also take some buccal swabs in this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is that?
A buccal swab is basically a DNA swab to collect a person's DNA. And what we do is we have special swabs that come in special tubes that we can swab the interior of a person's mouth. And we take two different swabs and swab each side of the mouth, one swab on one side and one swab on the other. And then those are submitted to evidence.
All right, so in this case, did you take a swab of the defendant, in this case, Jose Soto-Escalera?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would like to show you with the marker identification of State's Exhibit 161. You recognize that?
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
My handwriting is on the package.
All right. And is there any identifying information that shows it was you that did this swab?
Yes, sir. It has my initials and my ID number,
What was your ID number back then?
1030.
Okay, and what is the date that you took this swab?
8/25 of 2018.
Okay, do you see the person that you took the swab from, Jose Soto-Escalera, here in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
If you could you point to that person, identify him by nautical clothing?
He is sitting over to my left. He is wearing a black jacket and a blue colored shirt.
Okay, so that's the person that you swabbed, and that's the swab that's inside of this envelope, States Exhibit 161?
Yes, sir.
All right, this time, state moving evidence is marked for identification, States Exhibit 161.
No objection.
That item will come into evidence without objection.
Did you take some other involved swabs, some other people in this case?
Yes, sir.
And would those be Giovanni Alvarado, Mark Burke, and Bradley Rodriguez?
Yes, sir.
All right, this time I'd like to show you what's marked for identification, States Exhibits 162, 163, and 164. 164. Do you recognize those?
Yes, sir.
All right, how do you recognize those?
Again, it has my handwriting and the information on the packages.
All right, and then do you document who you're swabbing on each one? You write the name of the person that you're swabbing?
Yes, sir.
Can you place those in those envelopes?
Yes, sir.
How are these, I guess, what is, just so the jury knows, what is all the writing that's on and the tape? What is all of that?
That is our initials, our ID numbers and dates of when we seal the package. So then, like on this one, it has my initials and date up here, but somebody else opened the package at a later date and they signed down at the bottom of the package and dated on this side of the package. We always try to open the package in a different location than where it was sealed, but unfortunately, sometimes a package gets opened multiple times for different reasons, and but everybody tries to not sign over top of somebody else's seal, so it's resealed each time.
What are reasons why packages have to be reopened and then resealed?
It all depends on the evidence and who collects it. If say a road deputy collects a piece of evidence or a detective collects a piece of evidence, and the crime scene unit needs to examine that for trace evidence or process it for fingerprints or something like that, then it will come into the crime scene unit and we would have to open that package to then process it. And once we're done, we would repackage and seal it. Also, it could, if it is a cell phone or something like that, it could go to our forensics lab where the detective that handles cell phones and pulls data from those, they would have to unseal it and then reseal it again. And a lot of things go to a lab to be analyzed by an analyst at the lab. So they would then unseal it and reseal it.
So if there's a buckle swab, you guys put it in an envelope and seal it. If you send it to the lab, does it have to be reopened to be tested?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But every time that it's opened, it's documented and it's initialed and it's dated.
Yes, sir.
At this time, state moving evidence to mark for identification, States Exhibits 162, 163, and 164.
Any objection?
No objection.
Those items will come into evidence without objection.
Thank you, Ms. Carmichael. That's all the questions I have for now.
Yes, ma'am. When you took photos of my client on August 24th, 2018, you did not see any visual injuries or abrasions, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, my client gave verbal and written consent to give his DNA, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And swab his truck.
Yes, ma'am.
And you also, I think the state mentioned, got the DNA from Mark Burke, Giovanni Alvarado, and Bradley Rodriguez, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Bradley Rodriguez Jr., I should say. I have no further questions at this time.
Any further questions from the state?
There you are.
May Ms. Carmichael be released from her subpoena at this
She
time?
is subject to recall.
If you please step down, and you do remain subject to recall by the attorney so long as they, or make sure they have a phone contact for you. Thank you. And the
So if you go forward, raise your right hand, face the clerk.
You swear affirm that evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good morning.
Good morning.
If you could please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
My full name is Wayne Austin Walker Jr. My first name is spelled Wayne, and my last name is Walker.
All right. How is it that you're employed?
I'm a criminalist in the biology section at the Indian River Crime Lab.
And how long have you been working with the Indian River Crime Lab for?
since October of 2014.
All right, what is your specific job title?
I'm a criminalist in the biology section.
Criminalist. So what does a criminalist do?
So I examine items of evidence for biological materials such as blood, semen, and saliva. I then try to develop a DNA profile from unknown evidence samples. And if I am able to develop a DNA profile from that unknown evidence, I'll do a comparison to any known standards that I have, and I'll perform statistical analysis to determine how common or rare that unknown profile is. And then I write a report and testify when needed.
All right, now, prior to being able to do this type of analysis, I assume you have to have some training and a certain education.
Yes, I do.
If you could tell the jury about your background as far as your education and then your training leading up to you doing this job.
From the University of Central Florida, I have a bachelor's of science degree in forensic biochemistry, along with minors in chemistry and micromolecular biology. And from the University of South Florida, I have a master's of science degree in medical science with a concentration in health science. I started my career at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement at the Orlando Regional Operations Center. I started as a forensic technologist in the biology section. Basically, it's an entry-level science position. I helped clean the lab, make chemicals, do some maintenance on some instruments. After about a year and a half, I was promoted to a crime laboratory analyst in the biology section, at which point I went through about a year and a half training program. It's divided into two phases. The first phase deals with readings and working on practice samples, and the readings are about the techniques used in DNA analysis, as well as statistical methods used in DNA analysis. I then work practice samples. At the completion of the first phase, the second phase is supervised casework. So I started working actual cases under the direction of an already trained analyst. I was an analyst, caseworking analyst at FDLE for about 4 years before coming to the Indian River Crime Lab, at which point it was about a 6-month training program. I kind of say, I used to work at McDonald's, now I work at Burger King. One makes Whoppers, the other makes Big Macs, but it's really just burgers and fries. So both labs are doing the same thing. Some things are a little different, and that's what the 6 month of training was about at Indian River Crime Lab.
All right, now as far as the Indian River Crime Lab, is that certified?
It's an accredited laboratory, yes.
All right, and do you have to continue to have training periodically to able to keep doing what you do for your living?
Yes, I am required to have at least 8 hours of continuing education each year.
All right. And have you ever testified previously in court?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
Roughly 60 times.
Now, can you, I guess, explain the difference to the jury between what is called, you refer to as an unknown standard or an unknown sample versus a known standard?
So when you have DNA, there's no name. It's really what it looks like is peaks on a graph. So when you get evidence from an unknown source, you just have these peaks on a graph. It doesn't tell you whose this is. So what we'll do is after we determine what we can interpret, I'll then compare it to a known standard, which usually comes in the form of an oral swab or a blood stain card or blood swab from an individual. And that way I know what is this person's profile, what are the peaks that I would see, and I can use that to compare to the unknown profile from the evidence.
And can you just explain the physical process of how you do a DNA? I guess, how does a typical case where you get some swabs or a sample in the lab, how does that work? What do you do?
So for the very first thing that I'll do when I get evidence is I make sure that the packaging is properly labeled and is sealed. The packaging is sealed, it's properly labeled. I'll do whatever testing may be required, what's called the serology or body fluid identification. And then I'll take samples on for DNA analysis. And the DNA analysis, the first step is called extraction. And this is basically adding some chemicals and heat and just trying to break open the cells to get to the DNA. The second step is called quantitation. I actually want to know how much DNA is present in my sample, because how much DNA I have can affect my later processes. So I kind of think I like to use a lot of analogies. And this is sort of like orange juice concentrate. You don't just drink straight orange juice concentrate, you have to dilute it out. And the same thing happens with DNA. If I have too much DNA, that can affect my later processes. So I may have to make a dilution of that sample. On the flip side, if I have not a lot of DNA, if I don't get very good results, well, I know why I didn't get good results. There wasn't a lot of DNA to be processed. So it's also a good quality control measure. The next step is called amplification. And I actually don't look at all of an individual's DNA. We only look at 21 specific areas, and we make billions of copies of those 21 specific areas. This DNA is then, copies of the DNA are then put on an instrument that separates it based off size. And this is represented graphically. These are the peaks on the graph I mentioned earlier. So it's these peaks on a graph that I will use to interpret.
All right, now as far as you use this term DNA, what is DNA?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's the genetic blueprint that makes up all life. Humans actually have 2 copies of DNA. You get 1 copy from your mother, you get 1 copy from your father. This is determined at conception, and it remains the same your entire life. And all the cells of your body have the same DNA. So whether it's your blood or your skin cells or the inside of your mouth, all of those cells have the same DNA profile, and no 2 individuals have the same DNA profile except for identical twins.
All right, so my DNA is my DNA alone. Nobody else has the same DNA. I don't have an identical twin, so no one else has the same DNA that I would have.
That's correct.
All right. So I want to talk about some of the evidence that you see in this case. Is one of the things that you could do at the crime laboratory is determine paternity or who the father is of a child?
Yes, we do paternity testing for criminal cases.
Okay, were you asked to do some paternity testing in this particular case?
Yes, I was.
All right, so what I want to do is, before I show you any exhibits, How do you determine paternity? What do you need from the sheriff's office or from law enforcement to be able to do that analysis? What is required?
So first it'll be from the child, because I need their DNA profile, the mother. And again, so remember when I talked about DNA, humans have two copies, one comes from the mother. So from that child, if I know what the mother's DNA profile is, I can subtract out her DNA, and what I'm left over is what's obligate DNA from the father. The father has to have these peaks. So then I need standards from individuals who are the alleged father to do a comparison. And then if I cannot exclude that alleged father, I'll perform statistical analysis to give some weight to that person's inclusion as a possible alleged father.
All right. So in this particular case, then, and these have already been entered into evidence, States Exhibits 9 and 144. States Exhibit 9 is the blood standard of Josiah Wise. And then States Exhibit 144 would be the blood standard of Tania Wise. Can you take a look at those and let me know if you recognize those exhibits?
Yes, I do.
How is it that you recognize them?
So on both of the exhibits, there is a barcode sticker from the Indian River Crime Lab that has the Indian River Crime Lab case number and exhibit number. And then it's covered up with a sticker here, but you can see it more clearly here. I hand wrote the Indian River Crime Lab case number, the exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
All right. So were you able to get a DNA profile for each of those two standards?
Yes, I was.
All right. So those would be the mother and the child. What is missing for you to then determine whether or not someone's the father?
Standard from an alleged father.
All right. And did you receive additional standards in this case from some males?
Yes, I did.
What I'd like to do is provide you with States Exhibit 8, which is the DNA standard of Eric Alvarez. States Exhibit 162, the DNA standard of Mark Burke. States Exhibit 163, the DNA standard of Giovanni Alvarado. And then States Exhibit 164, the DNA standard of Bradley Rodriguez. Mr. Walker, do you recognize those exhibits?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize them?
So again, each of them I'll put up two at a time. They have the Indian River Crime Lab barcode sticker with the Indian River Crime Lab case number and exhibit number. And then I hand wrote, and I'll put the other two, I hand wrote the Indian River Crime Lab case number, exhibit numbers, the date I examined these, and my initials.
All right. And were you able to get a standard DNA profile for each of those individuals we just listed?
Yes, I was.
All right. And then did you do a comparison to the previously referenced standard of Josiah Wise, the baby, and the victim, Tania Wise, to see if any of those individuals could be the father of Josiah Wise?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what were the results of that analysis?
So the DNA profiles from the child, baby Wise, and the mother, Tania Wise, were compared with these alleged fathers. And these individuals are not consistent with having the DNA profile of that required to be the child's biological father.
Okay. Can you confidently say that?
Yes.
Okay. How can you say that?
The obligate markers that are needed, these individuals, maybe there might be some sharing, but they don't have, there are places where they are missing an obligate that needs to be present. So they would be excluded as the alleged father.
All right. Now I'd like to show you what's been marked right there in evidence, States Exhibit 161. This is the DNA swab of Jose Soto-Escalera. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that?
It has the Indian River Crime Lab barcode with the case number and exhibit number. And then I hand wrote, again, it's covered, but I hand wrote the Indian River Crime Lab case number, exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials would be under that sticker.
All right. And were you able to get a complete male DNA profile from that standard?
Yes, I was.
All right. And did you compare that standard to those previously analyzed of baby Wise and Tania Wise?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to reach a conclusion as to whether or not the defendant in this case, Jose Soto-Escalera, is the biological father of Josiah Wise?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And what was your conclusion?
So the DNA profiles from the child, baby Wise, and the mother, Tania Wise, were compared with that of the alleged father, Jose Soto-Escalera. The DNA profile from Jose Soto-Escalera is consistent with that required of the child's biological father. And now I'm going to read two stats that give statistical weight to that statement. The first is what's called the parentage index. And this is an odds ratio that determines how much more likely the alleged parent is to be the biological parent than an unknown random individual. And the parentage index is approximately 241 trillion. The next stat is called the probability of parentage. This is the chance that the alleged parent is the biological parent when compared to a random individual. And this is approximately 99.9999999999.
Is that 10 nines?
Yes, it is.
So
99.109.
It's official. You are the father. You unalive this young girl and your child. Messing around on your wife. I wonder if the wife going to be on the stand. Curious. But I think they're not together no more. I think I read that they divorced now. Something, I'm not too sure. You have to look it up. But I'm gonna look it up too myself. All right, let's resume. After this person's done on the stand, I'm gonna stop. I just want to hear this.
Percent
Yeah, percent.
that he's the father of the child.
Yes.
In addition to those standards, did you also receive swabs from evidence in this case?
Yes, I did.
What is StarMix?
StarMix?
Yeah.
So StarMix is a software program. It's called Probabilistic Genotyping Software Program. And StarMix, it's a tool that's used to help interpret data for DNA analysts. It uses biological modeling, probability theory, statistical theory, and computer algorithms to help infer the DNA profiles that would explain the unknown profile that I have.
I want to ask you about some items of evidence that you've received in this particular case. The first one I want to show you is State's Exhibit 7.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How do you recognize that?
It has the Indian River Crime Lab barcode sticker with the case number and exhibit number, and then I hand wrote the crime lab case number, exhibit number, the date I examined this, and my initials.
All right. For the record, you're looking at State's Exhibit 7, which is a DNA swab from a flashlight. Were you able to, I guess, what do you do when you get that swab in the lab, and what happened after you did your examination? And I believe for you, the number 295781.
So what I did with this exhibit is I tested it for DNA. I took a cutting, put that in a tube, and then performed the DNA analysis method on it.
And did you find any DNA on that item?
Yes, I did.
All right. Did you compare it then to the profiles? Well, I guess, did you find a major contributor or a minor contributor?
So my results of what I got was a DNA profile obtained from the swabs of the flashlight was consistent with being a mixture of a major and a minor component. A male DNA profile was obtained from the major component of this mixture at 15 locations. Results at the remaining 6 locations were inconclusive due to insufficient DNA quality and/or quantity.
So did you compare the major contributor, the DNA profile that you found, to the males that we previously referenced?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did it match any of them?
They were all excluded as contributor to the major profile.
All right. So there you found, to summarize, State's Exhibit 7, found some male DNA is on it. It's present, but it doesn't match Mark Burke, Giovanni Alvarado, Eric Alvarado, Bradley Rodriguez, or the defendant.
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 160, hair from Nike shoe. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that one?
It has the Indian River Crime Lab barcode sticker with the case number and exhibit number. I hand wrote the crime lab case number, the exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
All right. And based on your examination of that item, what came of it?
So for hair, I do an examination of the root end of a hair. Hair probably is the thing that is most, there's a lot of misinformation from TV and things like that. A lot of hair falls out naturally, and you can't get nuclear DNA, the type of DNA testing I do, from the hair. The hairs that we need to get DNA from have to actually be pulled from the head, so there's some skin material. So I looked at the root end of the hair that was on this, and it was found to be eligible for nuclear DNA analysis. But when I did my testing, it was subjected to DNA extraction procedures, but it failed to yield sufficient STR DNA. So basically what that means is this hair, when I looked under a microscope, it was good enough to at least try. But when I did the DNA process, there's no DNA on this sample.
So you can't do anything with it because there was no DNA.
There's no nuclear DNA.
All right. And then I want to ask you the same questions for some additional items.
These are all involved. It's State's Exhibit 22, hair from left hand. State's 23, hair left thigh. State's 24, hair left waist. State's Exhibit 25, hair left side. State's Exhibit 26, hair from inside back of blue underwear. And then 27, hair from back of gray and blue underwear. Do you recognize those items?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
So it's under this green card, but each of them has the crime lab barcode sticker with the case number and exhibit number. And then I can see my handwritten, I hand wrote the case number, exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
In the analysis that you just described in reference to hair, did you also perform that same analysis for each of those exhibits?
Yes, I did. I examined them microscopically.
And what were your conclusions? Were you able to get any nuclear, DNA for examination?
So I didn't try. These were, after looking at a microscope, they were unsuitable for nuclear DNA analysis.
Okay. What do you see that makes it unsuitable?
The hair, when it's unsuitable, it'll kind of have like a baseball bat shape. And that is because the hair is actually coming out of the follicle. So it detaches itself from the follicle. So it starts to shorten and becomes bulbous. And there's no, what I can see under microscope of looking like skin, we call it a follicular tag. So no skin or anything like that on there. So if it's just this kind of looks like a bulb, baseball bat, some people call it like a light bulb, then it's not even, I'm not going to attempt nuclear DNA analysis. I probably won't get anything.
All right. Now I want to ask you about some items that have already been entered in evidence. These are swabs from the victim. We have State's Exhibit 11, DNA swabbing from left-hand fingernail. State's 12, DNA swabbing from right-hand fingernail. 13, fingernail scraping left ring. 14, fingernail scraping right thumb. State's 15, fingernail scraping right middle. 16, DNA swabbing from left breast. And 17, DNA swabbing from right breast. Same questions as before. Do you recognize them? How do you recognize them?
So I do recognize them. Again, quite the best. They each have the Indian River Crime Lab barcode sticker with the case number, exhibit number, and then I've handwritten the case number, exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
All right. And for all of the victim swabs, did you perform an examination?
Yes, I did.
Did you find any DNA that was foreign to the victim on those items?
So I did additional testing on some of the items first, which is I tested them a presumptive test for blood. So the swabs from the left-hand fingernails, the swabs from the right-hand fingernails, and the swabs from the right breast, they tested positive chemically, indicating the presence of blood. I then did DNA analysis, and for all of these exhibits, the results were there were no DNA results foreign to Tania Wise were found on these following exhibits.
Some of them did have blood present.
They did not.
They did not have blood present.
Or they did not have a red-brown staining that would give me an idea to look for blood, to do my testing for blood.
All right. Now I want to ask you about State's Exhibit 18. It's the vaginal swab from the sexual assault kit that's already been entered into evidence. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
So this item came from a larger package that would have the Indian River Crime Lab barcode sticker. So this was inside, but I still handwrite the exhibit number, the case number, the date I examined it, and my initials, and those are present on here.
All right. And what analysis, do you do anything different or a different chemical test for this because it's a vaginal swab from a sexual assault kit?
Yes, so for the vaginal swabs, they tested negative chemically and microscopically for the presence of seminal fluid.
All right, so once you know that result, do you go any further with that?
Yes, so just because there's not semen, there could have been perhaps oral assault or digital penetration, so there could be DNA foreign to the victim on this sample anyway. Every time someone has sex, it doesn't mean they ejaculated. So I did DNA analysis on this sample, and the vaginal swabs were subjected to DNA extraction procedures, but they failed to yield sufficient male DNA for STR analysis. No further analysis was performed on this exhibit.
All right, so based on the results that you got at the crime lab, you couldn't do any further analysis.
That's correct.
I'd like to show you what's been marked for it's already been entered in evidence. State's Exhibit 33. This is the swabbing of the rear passenger door pull of the Dodge Ram truck. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
So it has the Indian River Crime Lab barcode sticker with the exhibit number and case number. And then I hand wrote the crime lab's case number, exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
All right, did you perform the same DNA analysis on that item?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results of your examination?
Okay. So from this item, I obtained a mixture of DNA profiles from 2 individuals was obtained from the swabs from the rear passenger door pull. And then I did do a comparison to the standards that I have.
All right, and would those have been Eric Alvarado, Jose Soto-Escalera, Mark Burke, Giovanni Alvarado, Tania Wise, and Josiah Wise?
Yes.
And I think Miss Bradley Rodriguez. What were your results?
So Eric Alvarado, he cannot be excluded as a possible contributor to this mixture. For the locations I was able to perform statistics at, the probability that a randomly chosen unrelated individual would be included as a possible contributor to this mixture is approximately 1 in 137 billion. Bradley Rodriguez, Jose Soto-Escalera, Mark Burke, Giovanni Alvarado, Tania Wise, and Baby Wise are excluded as possible contributors to this mixture.
So on the rear passenger swab, Eric Alvarado cannot be excluded, but the rest of the people that you have standards for can.
That's correct.
Next, I'd like to show you what's been entered into evidence of State's Exhibit 152, the swabbing from the front passenger headrest. You recognize that one?
Yes, I do. So it has the crime lab barcode sticker with the case number and exhibit number, and then I hand wrote the case number, the exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
All right. And did you perform an analysis on this exhibit, State's Exhibit 152?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what were the results?
Mixtures of DNA profiles from at least 3 individuals was obtained on the swabs from the front passenger headrest. Due to the complexity of this mixture, no further conclusions are possible regarding this profile.
All right. Is there ever a time where evidence that's been examined by your crime laboratory is then also sent to another lab?
It does happen occasionally, yes.
Okay. Did that happen in this case?
Yes, it did.
How does that happen?
So it depends. There's different ways. For this situation, the sheriff's office wanted to have additional testing done that is not performed at the Indian River Crime Lab. So when I do my testing, that first step is called extraction. That's getting the DNA out of the cell. What's left over is like a small amount of liquid. I don't use all that liquid. I use a portion of it, and then we retain or save that in case there's ever further testing that's needed. So this extract was given to the sheriff's office, and if they pursued further testing, they would be able to with that extract.
All right. So for some of the exhibits in this case, there were extracts that were made, or is that something you do on every single piece of evidence?
Every piece of evidence that starts with the DNA process, there is an extract left over because it's extracted. So then there's an extract.
So for every swab, there were extracts, but the extracts themselves can be sent to other labs if additional testing is requested by the agency.
Yes, it can.
Okay. And are you aware whether or not that was done in this case?
The only part I know is that the extract was given to the sheriff's office. I don't know what happened with it afterwards.
What I'd like to show you next is State's Exhibit 153, swabbing from the steering wheel. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is this another item that went to your lab in reference to this case?
Yes, it did, and I can recognize it. It has the crime lab barcode sticker with the case number and exhibit number, and then I hand wrote the case number, the exhibit number, the date I examined it, and my initials.
All right. And what were your results in reference to State's Exhibit 153, the steering wheel?
The DNA profile obtained from the swabs of the Dodge truck steering wheel was consistent with being a mixture of a major and a minor component. The male DNA profile obtained from the major component of the mixture matches the DNA profile obtained from the oral standard from Jose Soto-Escalera at 15 locations. Comparisons at the remaining 6 locations were inconclusive due to insufficient DNA quantity and/or quality. For those 15 areas, the frequency with which the major evidence DNA profile is expected to be found in an unrelated individual in the population at large is 1 in 288 quintillion, and then no comparisons are possible to.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end here. I see he's going to be on the stand for long because I was, scrolling through it. So I think they went to lunch and then he'll probably be back on the stand. But, this is a long day that they had in court. All right, so I might be doing more of a recap tomorrow, but we're definitely going to watch the interrogation. I want to watch that. So maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Or we do a recap of day 3. I don't know. We will see. But thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for hitting the like. And stay tuned for some more of Donna Just Being Real. Adios.